We're going to finish this chapter today. This is episode 3. Hope you enjoy. So where we last left off, Donnie was saying, "We live here in the meadow and have been coming to these for years. Sholly and I live just over there, a ways." He pointed his finger, though Minty could hardly see it. It was far in the distance, but she did see the outline of a little wooden house surrounded by green bushes. "If you ever visit the meadow again, you can drop by for a visit," said Donnie. "Right, Sholly?" Sholly was preoccupied with something else, and seemed to be writing something down on paper. "Sorry, what?" he asked. "Oh, yes, that's fine." "What are you writing down?" asked Minty, and immediately regretting it, for she was afraid she was prying. "Oh," began Sholly. "Well, Donnie and I have a workshop, and I was just sketching down some ideas for what to build, at least for this week." "You're working on that now?" Donnie exclaimed. "We're at a gathering, Sholly. You should really forget about that for at least a few minutes." "I'm sorry, I was just remembering the things we have to prepare for the people here in the meadow. And now I think I've lost some of the other pages I had. Good grief, they get so out of order." "Sholly, I said just forget about it for now." Minty awkwardly sat, keeping quiet while they went on with their argument. Gentlemen," she said, trying to get their attention, "you know, if you've lost any pages, I can help you out. Well, if you do need help." "What do you mean?" Dolly and Sholly asked at the same time, snapping out of their argument and trying to look more dignified. "I actually make sketchbooks, and I can send you a package for only 10 shards. I'm sure they'd help you in writing and sketching your plans out, or whatever it is you need to do. I know that paper can be a hard thing to come by, and I've created many books filled with empty pages for sketching, writing, making graphs, just anything really. So just in case you do want any, I have an offer out, but only if you want to." "Really?" asked Jolly with wide eyes. "You'd really do that for me?" "Sure thing. I can send it tomorrow if you like. My schedule isn't at all packed right now, so it'll be no problem." "Wow, thanks. That's so generous of you. I haven't used a sketchbook before. You can bring it to our house if you want to." "There, Sholly," said Downy, "you're finally making sense. Thank you so much, ma'am." "Of course," she smiled. "I'll drop by at some point. You can count on that." The sky seemed to be growing darker by the minute. There was more dancing, but this time it was slower, more of a waltz. "Would you like to dance, Miss Minty?" asked Donnie, quite surprised at his own words. He wasn't much of a dancer. Minty looked over her shoulder to the beautiful instruments that were being played, and the people slowly dancing together in the last light of the evening sunset, and smiled slightly. "That sounds like fun," said Minty, finally feeling more awake in body and soul. "Will you dance with me too?" asked Sholly. "Of course, Mr. Sholly," said Minty. "I'd be honored." They all stood up and walked over to the dancers as their ears began to fill with music. "Mr. Merli," said Minty, as they began waltzing, Have you and your brother always lived in Golden Meadow? It's so beautiful in this place. Indeed, it seems like a peaceful valley." "Yep, we have actually," said Donnie. "It's quite strange. I've never known anyone from here." "Where are you from, Miss Minty?" "Within Stonecliff Forest." "Those woods are so fun to adventure in," remarked Sholly, who was nearby at the moment, and couldn't wait to dance. "I've been there before when I used to take walks with my uncle. I saw the wolves in the mountains once, running and howling. It was kind of scary, but very cool." "Oh, you've been there?" asked Minty. "Yep, you're really lucky to live in a place like that. Maybe someday I can live there too." "I do really love it. I admit, though, it's nice to be in a meadow and have the feeling of openness. It's a different experience." Sholly turned around and sat by the musicians as they played. He loved to hear them close up and see all the instruments in detail. There was even a spinet piano being played. It's so beautiful in the woods right now. Sholly is always so anxious to get things done at the workshop so he can go adventuring, looking for slugs, frogs, and things he can pick from bushes, or for herbs to put into his different soups, said Donnie, still dancing with Minty. "They actually turned out quite good. I'm thankful to have him help me cook. What an amazing gift, and he seems so sweet." Minty was then silent. Oftentimes she didn't know what to say, or even what to speak. She wanted to listen to the music. The music then had become loud and grew faster. People began to twirl and sway within the evening air. Donnie and Minty had begun to do the same. Donnie began laughing heartily as he tried to keep up with the fast movements of the dancing crowds. To Minty's own surprise, she couldn't stop smiling. She had so much fun in those perfect moments that the dancing and the music seemed the only thing in the world. They laughed on, and they spun in circles and leapt about. Minty's hair flew though it had wings with her in every movement. And here's a picture. I don't have very much time, so I'm only going to show it for a second. When the dances were ended, they sat down around the fire, Minty's eyes staring into the flickering embers and flames. Mr. Murgrove happened to be sitting and talking to someone close by. She overheard him say something about his wife and when she died a long time ago. "What is Mr. Murgrove talking about?" she asked the boys. "Oh," Johnny began, "he's telling that man about what happened a long time ago to his wife Erling when she was young." "Oh, what happened to her?" "Well, he told us this. Long ago, when she was walking in the moonlight, she wore an old heirloom necklace from her dear grandmother. She was then kidnapped by a thief who stole it from her." "Oh my, what happened then?" "The thief was soon nowhere to be seen, and all she could see about her was a vast land below. She was atop the highest pillar mountain she'd ever known. She was trapped and could not get down. It said that the thief found a way to trap her up there, so no one would ever see her again." Did she survive?" "Yes. She was rescued by the most beautiful bird imaginable, a bird with glowing wings and crimson eyes. It flew her down to safety, back to her family. They never found the necklace, but it was no matter. She was alive, and was forever grateful for her life after that." There's a picture of Erling on top of the mountain. Minty was silent. She was in awe and lost in the words that Donnie spoke to her. "So is she now—" Minty began and stuttered. "She died quite a few years ago," said Donnie. "We never met her. When we first knew Mr. Murgrove, he was grieving the loss of her. She meant the world to him. She completely changed his life when they first knew each other." Minty felt sorrow for Mr. Murgrove, but at the same time she felt a deep inspiration. She could picture Erling in her mind, the thought of her ordeal and of the bird that had come to rescue her. And at the very thought of Mr. Murgrove, there he was on a platform high enough so the entire party could see him. Eventually, after quieting down the noisy crowd, he was able to speak. "Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, I thank you from the very bottom of my heart that you could all be here today for this gathering. The doves of the beautiful land of Dwaller have done such marvelous work in being able to deliver everyone an invitation. They have such a keen sense for knowing the peoples of this land, and though not everyone could come, I'm so thankful for all who could." There were shouts and clapping and cheering among the crowd. Minty sat near the crackling fire with both of the boys, her hair brushed back after the dancing she'd done, and a small glistening smile on her face, quietly listening to Mr. Murgrove speak. "I just need to say that you are all very welcome here whenever you please to come," he continued. "And I want to tell you all, whenever you may find yourself in darkness, do not doubt that there is a small flickering light waiting for you to walk ahead and to be in its midst. To me, a gathering for people can be such a thing as this. I remember when I was just a lad, and I came to this place for the first time in my life. After many years of travel and hardship, through lands far from here, I felt quite at peace with the thought of having a home at last." The birds will always sing, and the water runs through the mountains and rivers, journeying every minute of every day. My dear people, I wish you all a fine evening. Eat, drink, laugh, and sleep well tonight, my friends, and I thank you once again. Thank you." He bowed to show his gratitude, then walked into the crowds of people as they clapped and cheered and thanked Mr. Murgrove for inviting them. Minty's heart grew warm inside, which was something she did not often experience. Her eyes softened, and were not so tense and exhausted as they'd been earlier, and they even seemed to glow. It was very dark now. Minty stood up from the tree stump and got ready to go back home. "I believe I should be going home now," she told the two boys. "I'm glad I got to meet you two because you're a lot kinder than what I was secretly afraid of. Thank you." "Oh, well, thank you," said Donnie, shaking her hand. Sholly giggled. He thought almost everything she said was funny. Minty chuckled. "Well, I am truly glad to have met you as well, miss," Donnie said. "Take care and have a safe trip home." Okay. "Thank you. Goodbye. And don't forget to come and visit us." "Yes, don't worry, I'll come." She walked out into the grasses, looking over her shoulder to the lantern-lit place, but then, looking ahead, she walked towards home. On her way, she saw Mr. Murgrove sitting alone on a chair in the grass. She walked slowly up to him. "Mr. Murgrove," she said, "are you all right?" "Oh, hello, Miss Minty," he smiled. "I was just thinking." "About what?" He sighed and then was quiet. "Nothing important," he answered simply. "You look quite worn out, dear. Some of our guests are staying the night here in the meadow. They had a long trip to make it here and will leave tomorrow. Is your home far, dear? You can stay if you need to. Oh, no, sir, replied Minty. I'm not very far, thankfully. Well, you had best be going back to your home and rest. I know how much a bit of fun and staying up late into the night can wear on a young person. I used to have many of those nights myself when I was young, but never mind, you should go home and sleep now. Thank you for having me. I know it must be a lot of work to host a long gathering like tonight's. I'm so grateful that you came. Truly I am. It was such a pleasure to meet a young person like yourself. I'd like it if you could come visit me in my house sometime in the future. Would you please? That would be just swell. Thank you so much, Mr. Murgrove. And I think I'll sleep well tonight. Thank you. Good night, Miss Stardom. May the angels watch over you always. Minty had begun walking on her way as Mr. Murgrove's words to her echoed. She breathed a sigh into the night air and paused a moment, seeing something she hadn't noticed before. It was a little graveyard. One of the graves had beautiful violets growing around it. She couldn't help but walk up to it. She read the words inscribed in the stone, "Beloved Erling, her life was a precious one." Minty had gone unnoticed by Mr. Murgrove as she walked towards it. She stood there for a moment, looking upon it, then soon continued on her way, slowly walking back on towards home. As she entered the woodlands that climbed the side of her rocky hill, she heard rustling in the trees above her, and then out flew the raven-like bird Minty had met before. "You again," Minty gasped. It wasn't a lie that she was frightened by this creature after what he tried to do to her the evening before. She began to race toward her hill. She stopped a moment to look behind her. There he was, sitting upon a branch with his cold face and scarred feet. He almost looked pitiful, though he was frightening to see. She stood still, watching him, not knowing whether she should run away or not. What happened next she really couldn't believe. She actually spoke to him. "Is this where you live?" she asked him, not really paying attention to what she was saying. The bird looked up with his water-droplet eyes into hers. "Yes," he answered, seeming confused as to why she would talk to him at all. "Why did you do that to me last evening?" she asked him bitterly. "Why would you scare me so? Why would you steal from me? You don't really look much like a scavenger, though I do see some resemblance. But you were so violent." She spoke, almost forgetting that he understood what she was saying, and as though he was just a regular dumb animal. He didn't answer, as Minty stood waiting in the dark. "You don't understand, do you?" he finally answered. "Have you never heard of the thieving colonies? The crows? Both them and I have kept our word to do our job. We're thieves, and we want our revenge on humans." "Revenge?" she exclaimed. "How could you do such a thing? What have I ever done that you haven't done to me first?" "Even though you think it might not be my business, when someone is treated that way, something has to be done. Perhaps you're only an animal, but I know you can understand sense." She walked up to the bird and looked him straight in the eye. Can't really see it. I think I should tell you something," Minty quivered, but tried to keep her face angry. "Don't you ever come to me again and steal from me, or from anyone for that matter. Don't you even dare, you got it?" The bird became outraged. "Go away," he screeched aggressively. He flew from his branch and swooped towards Minty, but she wasn't afraid this time. She grabbed his ankles and held him down. "Let go," he squawked, trying to get loose, but he seemed to be very weak, unable to harness enough strength. "Let go! You're crazy!" "Shut up," Minty said sternly. The bird struggled to get free from Minty's grasp, but it was useless. She was so angry that her eyes seemed to be locked onto his feet. He soon grew weary and fell to the ground from tiredness. "How did you find yourself with those crows and their schemes to attack people? It must have happened somehow. Tell me." "Why?" asked the bird. "Why do you want to know?" Minty thought about it a moment, wondering why she even did. She could have just left then and there, but she didn't. Something was holding her there, though she didn't know why. "Because I have a right to know," she answered at last. The bird looked up at Minty as she held him down, her teeth clenched. "What things do you want me to tell you?" he asked. "Well, tell me your backstory," she said. "About your mother and father. Where are they? And why are you doing this with your life?" "They died a long time ago. My mother was an eagle and my father was a crow." Minty looked at him in astonishment. "So what are you then?" she asked. "I have no given name. All I can tell you is that I am made of eagle and of crow. I never met mother. She died before I hatched. So my pa raised me until I was at least a year old, but then he died as well." Minty was quiet. She looked again to his scarred feet, which she was still grasping, and let go at once. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Perhaps I shouldn't have been so harsh. I'm sorry to hear of your family, but don't you see that what you've been doing with your life will only cause you pain? Look at what I've done to you. It's a wonder of what others have done or will do to you for your behavior towards them." "Leave," he answered simply and sternly. His eyes turned teary and angry. Minty still thought he looked as though he was drunk in his mind, or sick in some way. She felt sorry, but was still upset. She left at once and climbed up a rocky hill into the forest. It was chilly on the way back. The midnight breeze cooled the forest significantly. It seemed as if hours had passed when Minty finally walked back into her house. She plopped down on her bed, falling into a deep sleep.